So in the reading, we hear that Jesus was visiting Bethany prior to going to Jerusalem. And here's a little map that shows us just how close Bethany was to Jerusalem. It was a village very close by. And he stayed in the home of Simon the leper. Bethany is now called Al-Azariah. But whilst staying in the home of Simon the leper, there's another little picture there. That is one of the oldest pictures I could find of Al-Azariah, Bethany. And it's easy to see that in the background you see some ruins of the very old village, the original village. And most of those places they were built on top of the original houses. So we heard that whilst being served at the table, Mary comes up and massages Jesus' feet with expensive oil, then dries them with her hair. We're told at this point Judas goes absolutely nuts, saying they could have sold the oil and given the money to the poor. In this reading, John attributes this to Judas being a thief and says he was always dipping into the collective purse. Curious really, and my first thought was, if John knew Judas was a thief, why would they let him hold their money? My second thought was that we never seem to hear about them receiving money, taking up collections or receiving donations. So how much money did they really have? Sadly, we do not get the full story. In fact, John's version of events at Bethany differs from both Matthew and Mark, who also describe the event, whereas Luke doesn't mention it at all. So how do they differ? In Matthew, we hear that it was the disciples that were indignant at this waste of expensive perfume. Not one disciple, all of the disciples. And he also tells us that a woman, no name given, poured the oil on Jesus' head, not his feet. And that to me is a more familiar image we have of anointing. When you think of people being anointed, you think of a cross of oil on their forehead or splashing of water. In Mark, we hear that some of those present became indignant and rebuked the woman. Again, no name of the woman, and just some of those present. But he agrees that the oil was poured on Jesus' head. So although they all agree roughly on most of the details, after all, they were in Bethany, they were at Simon the leper's house, although I suppose it should be Simon the ex-leper, and that Jesus told them off, but only John singles out Judas. And more than that, he says Judas was a thief, stealing from the common purse. It makes me wonder why. Obviously, all these events are related to someone after they have happened. And by the time they are noted down, John knows of Judas's betrayal of Jesus. But why does he claim he's a thief? Did they discover coins missing after Judas had left? If Judas was responsible for the communal finances, then how could John have discovered he was dipping into them? Or was it just that John was angry because of the betrayal and threw in another accusation or two? All possible, I guess. But again, we do not know the whole story. In fact, we do not know the whole of Judas's story. How can we judge the man on so little evidence? And what is no more than hearsay, really? After all, who reported that he met with the high priests? Who was witness to the deal he struck? And if he was such a wrong 'un, why did he then kill himself in a fit of remorse? Doesn't sound much like a thief and a betrayer. We don't know. We only know that those closest to Christ shared with us, and through them, with us. And what we must bear in mind is that they were hurt by her. That they were probably blaming themselves for not seeing it, for not heeding the forewarnings Christ had given them previously. We will never truly know what happened and how Judas came to betray someone he had followed, lived and ate with like family. The thing is, I don't believe it was a single decision, a single moment that made Judas do what he did. Many of the things we do are a culmination of lots of little seemingly insignificant decisions that lead us to a final point that from the outside, from others' viewpoint, can seem almost cataclysmic, sudden and out of the blue. Maybe that was the case with Judas. It is clear that John thought he was a thief. Maybe that animosity predated the betrayal. Maybe Judas had been viewed with suspicion and distrust by the others for some time. However, there are also those who believe that Judas betrayed Christ because he had thought they were going to overthrow the Romans. And when he realised that was never going to happen, he thought that stirring up trouble by going around preaching to people, healing people, and causing a bit of a kerfuffle would only cause more pain for everyone. So he did it to save his country, a true patriot. Others claim that Christ told Judas to betray him, and that Judas was only doing what he was told. We can never know for sure, but as recently as the 70s, a codex, a book, was found that was said to be the Gospels of Judas, in which the tale of the crucifixion is told from Judas's point of view, and seems to indicate that Judas was the truest disciple, following God's will even to the point of condemning Christ to death. Certainly we hear before his death, Christ asked God to give him a pass on this part of the plan. Maybe Judas was there as a failsafe. Again, we don't know. We cannot know for sure. So it boils down to what we believe. It boils down to our faith. I believe that Judas was part of God's plan. I don't believe he was a thief, or that he did it for money. As there is some evidence that the 30 pieces of silver is taken from an earlier prophecy and was added to the tale by the writer. I believe that Judas did what he felt he had to do, what he was supposed to do, and that it was such a difficult decision, that he was under such horrendous pressure, that following it, he took his own life. I cannot believe that someone who in many other parts of the Bible was respected, worked as hard as any other disciple, preached, healed, followed Jesus for all that time, would suddenly change and sell his allegiance. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Sadly, this isn't like an episode of one of my favourite crime dramas, where inspiration will strike and the truth will out. However, that doesn't mean it's not like Cold Case, which for those of you who haven't seen it, is a programme where years and years after an event, sometimes 30, 40 years, new information surfaces and a group, the main characters, look into it and discover the truth about an event. After all, as I've just said, the Gospels of Judas were found in the 70s. So who knows what other evidence might be out there just waiting to be discovered? We have already seen that the four main Gospels vary in details based on the viewpoints of the authors. And to my mind, it's clear John didn't like Judas. Branding him a thief after he was dead, as if being the one who betrayed Christ wasn't enough. So it comes down to what we believe, what we see in the Bible, and what we take from it. But that is the basis of faith, isn't it? Because if there was absolute proof, if there was absolute evidence of all these events, then surely it would be knowledge, not faith. And the difference to my mind is that knowledge is finite, where I believe faith is not. So, Bethany, oil, arguments, Judas, John, details, suppositions, conjecture. Does it all matter? Clearly Luke didn't think so because he didn't even mention it. So in future, when we think of Judas, I hope we can give him the benefit of the doubt. Not just jump on the Judas is a traitor bandwagon, and maybe look at him from another viewpoint. As a man who did what he felt he had to in very difficult circumstances, at a very trying time, and in the end, paid the ultimate price for it. Traitor or true follower, or maybe somewhere in the middle. Without knowing his whole story, we cannot know, nor should we judge. I, for one, think we should look at his whole life and not just the end of it, to gain the measure of the man. And in fact, that is how we should look at everyone, not just looking at the moment that we see them, the moment we are in, but looking to see what was behind it, learning their story, listening, not judging.